You're talking about 300,000 job changes per week. And you are also updating this every 10 days or so. Where is that information coming from? Is it coming from, for example, staffing firms? Is it coming from enterprise organizations? Is it coming from startups? Where is this feed coming from? And how did you guys get to tap into it?
The feed is coming from the people directly, right? So, every single person in our database starts with that individual. We then go out to the open web, search for the publicly available information, that individual's digital exhaust as it relates to their employment status, and using the search engines to ask, hey, are we looking at the right person? Verifying that we're looking at the right person. And based on the starting point that we had for that person, verifying whether or not that starting point for their employment status is still correct or something has changed.
The idea of job security is outdated as a landline. If you haven't been in a search for a while, it's probable you will at some point, by choice or not. Most executives admit to staying way too long or sense what's coming and justify staying anyway. Here, there's another reason. The faulty belief that navigating to what's next will inevitably be worse and has to suck. Screw that. Lauren Greif has spent a lifetime in corporate and executive search, calling bullshit on stale career advice that most still use. This is Career Blast in a Half, the career podcast for executives ready to cut past outdated career advice to fuel your outcomes now. So let's go.
So we live in a world of data, right? We're always looking at metrics, understanding analytics, trying to figure things out and make sense of a lot of information and cull it down into places that are highly visual and easy to digest. And that's how I met our guest today, Jason Saltzman. He doesn't come necessarily from the world of data. He actually comes from the world of cycling, which is another story unto itself. But I think I'm pretty safe to say he's kind of like an amazing data nerd. And he is currently the director of growth at Live Data Technologies. So there's a pretty good chance you've never heard of Live Data Technologies. I kind of stumbled on it because it was in a Forbes article, and then I followed that thread, and that's how I got the privilege of having Jason here today. But really what he does is he's looking at reams and reams and reams of data with respect to all of the transitions, trends, and activity in the marketplace. So I am going to turn this over to you, Jason, and thank you for being here. And thank you for also indulging me in like allowing me to pick your brain, which I hate that expression, by the way, but to really explore a lot of these things and tell us about yourself and tell us about what it is that is happening over at Live Data Technologies so that we understand the magnitude of the opportunity.
Thank you for having me on. It was great to connect on LinkedIn and get a sense of what you're doing to help people find their next roles. It's sort of directly tied to what we're doing here at Live Data, which is tracking job change data for 90 million plus individuals in the white collar workforce, right? So we have a massive database of 90 million people, and we validate their current employment status at most every 10 days. So that means we sort of get the real-time pulse, which is the data set behind a lot of the insights that I tend to post on LinkedIn. Everything from yesterday, we were featured in a LinkedIn news article about NVIDIA leapfrogging Apple in terms of market cap, and we could start to look at maybe some of the threats to NVIDIA's position, right? Maybe namely that Apple is hiring a whole hell of a lot of chip talent and semiconductor talent, and maybe on a path along with a number of NVIDIA's other customers to go from customer to competitor over the next few years, and what that might mean for NVIDIA's stock price. We can look at everything from insights like that to the average turnover rate of any given employee, to broken out by sector, broken out by job level, by job function, and everything in between, right? We see on average 300,000 job changes every week, and that is sort of, when you have the real-time pulse, you can ask and answer a lot of questions about what's happening with the workforce.
Okay, so I'm going to just capitalize on some of these high levels. You're talking about 300,000 job changes per week. And you are also updating this every 10 days or so, right? So this is real and raw. I mean, not raw in the presentation, but raw like right out of the actual in real life situations. This isn't dated. It's actually as close to real time as you could possibly get. And what you've also shared with me, even before this recording, is that you are culling that information from credible sources and share with us where is that information coming from? Is it coming from, for example, staffing firms? Is it coming from enterprise organizations? Is it coming from startups? Where is this feed coming from, and how did you guys get to tap into it?
So the feed is coming from the people directly, right? So
Mm.
every single person in our database starts with that individual. We then go out to the open web and search for the publicly available information, that individual's digital exhaust as it relates to their employment status, and can build a profile, both looking retrospectively and on an ongoing basis every 10 days, to see if that person has, loud and proud put out a signal, or a changed signal as to what their current employment status is. So we can go out, prompt engineer the search engines, the likes of Google, Bing, Yandex, what have you, and have them return, is Lauren Greif still the founder of Career Blast and a Half? If not, where is she now? What has changed? What returns when you can try this for yourself. You can go Google your name and then job, and we have a more advanced process without sharing all of our secret sauce than just that. But that's sort of the underpinnings of what we do, is going and using the search engines to ask, hey, are we looking at the right person? Verifying that we're looking at the right person, and based on the starting point that we had for that person, verifying whether or not that starting point for their employment status is still correct or something has changed.
Wow. So I want to also make sure that everyone who's listening understands that your platform, Live Data Technologies, is primarily a B2B enterprise solution, right? So if you are a large organization, you want to make sure that your database is clean, right? They should call Jason. You want to make sure that people are in the right place and that there's not like a lot of again, like outdated or stale information that's only going to make the searches take longer because you don't necessarily know where things are. But for the people who are also listening, who are lay people like me, but they are also white collar job seekers, talk to us about how we can take advantage both on LinkedIn and the platform, some of the capabilities that are available for free for us to use.
Absolutely. Right. I think, as you alluded to, right, we have a solution and a data set that appeals to a wide variety of people and a wide variety of use cases, right? Everything from B2B sales to recruiting to large contact data vendors, who sit on millions and millions of records and have to keep those up to date, to investors across multiple asset classes, to job seekers. And I think one of the best signals for job seekers that we're well positioned to provide is who has recently joined or left any target company, any company on your wish list to go and join. And if you can have the real-time signal on, look, this company has been hiring a lot. They've been hiring a lot in the department I'm looking to join. They just hired a new CHRO or VP of Human Resources or Chief Talent Partner or whatever it may be. All of those are probably very positive signs for your ability to, A, reach out to those people specifically, as individuals, but also at the company level, get a sense of how the company is growing and how the company is trending. Inversely, if the company is shedding a bunch of people in the department that you're looking to join, maybe not the best sign, or there's a massive amount of turnover in the company as a whole. The company's been going through a right sizing, as many companies over the last 18 months have. All of these can be good signals, both at the individual level and at the company level, as to how you can go on and sort of refine your search and refine your outreach.
So if I'm a job seeker, which I'm not right now, but I have been, so I'm going to fast forward myself into today's market. And I'm, a CMO, or maybe I'm a CTO or CIO or one of those things. And I have my top 10 list of you call it a wish list. That's absolutely fine, right? My ideal companies. And I'm going to also do a shout out. Don't just add them in there namby-pamby. Make sure that you align with some values and criteria. But now, again, fast forward, you have your list. I know from our conversations and from perusing your site that I have up to 5 free searches. I also, before we got on, I did ask you, can you replace those, or once you pick those 5, are you set? And you said, you keep those same 5, and they don't get replenished, or you can't recycle them off. However, can you tell us the types of things that we would be able to find if I put in that company? I mean, I don't even know. Like, it would be BMW, right? So now I'm looking at BMW, and that, I want to just better understand what is happening with their workforce, what is happening with the data, what would be the kind of the first things that I can expect, and how would I be able to optimize that, use that for myself? What kind of intel can I then apply?
Absolutely. So maybe to start, we have on our website free company profile search. So you
Yes.
can go in and look at the last year of hiring data, the arrivals, departures, growth of any given department, where they've been recruiting to, where they've been losing people to, what the profile of the people that have joined might look like in terms of where they went to school, what the current tenure for employees at that company might look like. And that can probably help you refine your ideal company list.
And you
Just
could
to start.
use that with unlimited usage.
Unlimited, right? It lives on our website. It's sort of our public service and display of our data sort of
Oh
at the
my
company
goodness.
level.
Whoa, this
Then
is like this. By the way, I just want to do a shout out. Not only I do love you, LinkedIn, but this is much more accurate. So,
yeah,
if you're
well,
looking at
we
the
also know that
insights
there's a lot of
tab,
garbage on LinkedIn, right? You can go
yeah.
and try to get a similar view on LinkedIn, but you run into the problem where Plaid, one of the high flying fintech
Mm,
companies, has a bunch of plaid skirt makers associated with their company, right? That's one version of garbage on LinkedIn. There are other versions
mm,
of garbage on LinkedIn, including a whole bunch of fake profiles and bogus profiles that people have been using to buy likes, buy comments, buy engagement, scrape down logged in data, which is in violation of LinkedIn's terms and services. There's a lot of garbage on LinkedIn, and we pretty aggressively or very aggressively have gone through the process of being able to identify that garbage and cull it from our data set and
mm.
help our clients and customers cull it from theirs.
Wow. Okay. This is like getting Machiavellian. I don't know. This is like it's so corrupt. I can't stand it. Like all these like black hat things that are happening on LinkedIn. It like breaks my heart. And on some level, sadly, it was maybe destined to happen. But regardless, I think the point that you're making is we keep it clean here.
Yep, absolutely. We keep it clean, and it's something that's very important to us in terms of how you can derive the actual signal from our data, right? If there's a bunch of noise and a bunch of garbage, the signal becomes much harder to find.
Hmm. So you have the general, public service access, and then from there you have Your
what we're calling
selected.
our free trial, or the initial version of our free trial, to tease some upcoming product feature releases. But the initial version allows anyone to come to our site, select 5 companies, and maybe if they want to refine it some, the departments that they care about at those companies, and get a weekly email blast of the people moving into and out of those companies. Right?
Oh,
In
sweet.
that email blast, you get, we'll highlight the people that we think are most important, but you'll also get a full CSV of everyone who joined and left during that
Ooh,
last week.
ooh. This is this is crazy gold. This is like the biggest gift that you could be offering us. So you have the main area, your top 5, and then you also have a newsletter that comes out weekly. Talk to us about why we should get this newsletter.
So the newsletter really started as I was doing some auditing, or I guess there are two elements of our newsletter. One is the latest and greatest insights that I've dug into, the questions that we know you can ask and answer with our data set. Everything from where are the most interns getting hired in 2024,
Mm,
to which companies are attracting the most AI and ML talent,
mm,
to what's happening to the companies in Austin, the big tech companies in Austin that helped fuel Austin's rapid growth
mm,
during the pandemic and in the few years following, and have now done a bunch of layoffs. Where are all those people that
mm,
flocked to Austin, were
mm,
employed by those companies? Where have they gone since? And so
mm,
that's sort of the general thesis of Human Capitalist, which is the name
mm.
of our newsletter, is what questions can you ask and answer of a 90 million person data set of this
Oh my
nature?
god, I can't wait for this newsletter to blow up from this conversation because
Neither
it's
can I.
called Human Capitalist, right?
Yes, and you can
Yeah,
find it on Substack,
and
is the
Substack.
platform we use. Um, and then the secondary element of our newsletter is a sort of sub feature called Movers, Shakers, and Moneymakers. That is my Midas list, so to speak, of the most interesting job changes we saw in the last week. So of those roughly 300,000 job changes we see every week, I picked 10 that are interesting, entertaining, actionable, punny, whatever it might be, that is demonstrative of the things we can know, the people that we would like to highlight, and the people I think that will be most interesting to my audience and our audience more broadly.
So I live for that. I love that when you do that because one of the things that I think is super cool when you do that is it's not just the names and what's happening. You really do a great job of identifying. I'll just call them outliers. Like I remember the woman who recently landed at Pinterest, and she was coming from her own consultancy, and so she didn't have a linear background in order to land. I think it was like a chief people officer role. It was
Yeah.
crazy. So
One,
being
right,
able to
another
see.
nonlinear role into the people in HR function was I think 1 or 2 weeks ago I found a guy who had been a VP of engineering and a chief technical officer, and then all of a sudden 2 or 3 weeks ago made him relatively aggressive, not with a negative connotation, but relatively aggressive career pivot to being a VP of talent. And when I'd reached out to him to say, hey, congrats on the role. I'd love to feature you in this week's Movers, Shakers, and Moneymakers. And he said, yeah, I'm really excited for this challenge. Computers are really easy to interact with. They're stable. You understand them. It's a well-confined space. Humans are going to be an entirely different challenge.
Oh my goodness. So now I have to ask you, because your arms are wrapped around this data all day long. We've talked about what you do. We've talked about some of the offerings. And now I want to know, I really want to know this. Like, what are you seeing? What are you seeing with all this information? What can we might expect? for the next 6 months? Where are we seeing more of this, nonlinear hiring? And I guess it, of course, begs the question, so how did they do that, right? Um, and I don't expect that you have like an immediate answer, but the point is that what things are either currently happening or that you can potentially see emerging, even things on the way out?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, we see a lot of the shifting nature of go-to-market teams. So people rethinking roles like the sales development rep, the business development rep, people rethinking and getting leaner and meaner on other elements of their go-to-market team, whether that's marketing or customer success, how much of that might be driven by AI advancements or sort of just a general right sizing following the zero interest rate period, where there was sort of this predictable revenue playbook that everyone started to follow. I can't necessarily tell you, but we can understand the trend itself and then start to think, okay, what might be driving these trends when we look at this
Sure.
data. Similarly, I think one of the things that's top of mind for me and a lot of the people that I spend time talking to, from economists to reporters, is this idea of the great stay. And in the last 4 years now, we really quickly went from the pandemic, which threw a wrench in sort of the traditional workforce models we'd come to love or come to hate, depending on who you were, to the Great Resignation in late 2020 and early 2021, to the Great Termination in late 2022, and what seems to be running through present a little bit, and then all the way into what's now being coined as the Great Stay, which sees sort of employee confidence being shot and employer just having to think twice or three times about every time they want to go and increase the size of their team. The question becomes, how do we do this most efficiently? Do we need more people, or can we find, sort of technological ways to try to tackle our problems? And so with that, we see, following all of this turmoil of the last three and a half years, in the last 6 months to 12 months, a lot of, the average tenure at most companies for active employees has just kept climbing. People are staying put, whether voluntarily or sort of they feel arm twisted. The company did a round of layoffs. They don't know how stable their job is. They don't know how much any of their ideal companies might be hiring. Right. So,
Mm.
for job seekers looking and seeing those hiring trends at any given company that's on your ideal company list can be a really strong signal that that's a company worth pursuing, versus a company that has basically flatlined their headcount over the last 6 to 12 months. Right. It's far harder to get hired at a company that's not hiring than it is to get hired at a company that's hiring.
Right.
There's a lot behind sort of these macro trends, and whether the great stay turns into the great standoff or
Mm.
whatever it might be, where you have employers and employees looking at each other thinking, I don't know what I want to do with you. I don't know that if I want to be here, but I also don't know what else I can go do.
Mm. So I like that. So the first one was, a lot of right sizing with go to market teams. The
Mhm.
second one that you talked about was really the great stay and some of the kind of no man's land with respect to what might happen. Should I stay or should I go now? I'm just quoting the Clash.
Yeah.
And the third one might be what? What would be the third one that you are seeing these macro trends?
It's interesting. I'm trying to think about other good macro trends. I think there's a lot of rush for, the AI ML talent gold rush, and
Mhm.
really the ability to understand which companies are hiring true AI ML research grade talent versus
Mhm.
who might just be transitioning some of their existing engineering or data talent into an AI ML role. Right. And that's not to say that these people aren't capable of sort of upskilling and finding these new capabilities to really drive AI ML success for these companies. But at the end of the day, you can't grow the universe of true research grade talent
Mm-hmm.
as quickly as the demand for that talent has grown. So where are the current wave of AI ML hiring coming from? Are these people who came from the top schools and a research background there? Are these people that are getting whisked away from the big tech companies, the Metas, the Amazons, the Microsofts, the Apples of the world, and are now being poached by earlier stage companies or companies in other industries? Are these people getting pulled from OpenAI or
Mm-hmm.
Anthropic or DeepMind and being whisked away to these other companies? There's a
Right.
if we're going
So
to look and
there's
point at
kind
a
of like the
talent war.
elite set of real deal AI
Yeah.
people, and then there's like other AI. Sorry, but I'm just gonna say it, like wannabes, like people
Yeah.
that are good but aren't necessarily like the premier
Mhm.
practitioners.
Right. And we see this a lot with people, especially, the consulting firms where, they've had to reposition themselves as AI has threatened their business
Right.
some, right? If I can go ask ChatGPT to build me a business plan,
Right.
maybe I don't need to hire McKinsey. But now they've had to reposition to be able to help companies adapt and adopt to AI. And so you see a lot of these people who have been lifelong consultants that are now AI ML consultants. And right, I'm all for upskilling, but something tells me that someone who went from being a lifelong consultant for the last 5 to 10 years, didn't pick up true research grade
Mm,
AI skills in 6 months. And I'd be
totally.
happy to be proven wrong.
Exactly. So here we are, second half of the year. We've kind of identified some three macro trends. I know that you're not, Nate Silver with like all this predictions about elections, and we're not even going to touch that. Don't worry. But what I do want to find out is seeing what you see in the amount of data and the amount of tenure or lack thereof, the amount of changes, right? We're talking about a huge level of tonnage, 300,000 a week plus, right? What are your best either pieces of advice or suggestions for somebody who is in the white collar job market arena? What would you say to them, either with respect to data or as respect to like, hey, FYI, this is something that you really need to know?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, with respect to the data, the first thing I would say is, use the signals available, whether that's, find the right person to reach out to for your job search, the right human resources person, the right person that would be leading the team that you want to join. You want to make sure that you found the right person who's still at the company, hasn't changed jobs, hasn't left, and you've done your homework as to sort of the structure of that team and the structure of that company, and a lot of the signals that you can find in the data as to their hiring patterns and hiring trends. And then I think at the more macro level, there's a lot to be said for understanding that, as hard as the job search might seem, it's hard for everyone in a sense. The average time to find a new job is up. The sort of volatility for a lot of the, white collar jobs is up at the same time, right? And even though those two things seem to be somewhat contradictory, I think it's a lot to do with the nature of how companies in specific sectors and specific industries are changing their hiring patterns and changing their how they're building out their teams for the next few years in what I'll call sort of a new look to the workforce. So,
What
I'm
does
not a
longer
career
mean?
advice person,
No,
but
of course not.
the, understanding that if it takes you longer than the 2 months that you thought it was going to find a new job, most people are taking longer than that anyways. We can look and see in the data that, the percentage of people who find a new job within 3 months is down versus 2 years ago.
Mm.
And, that sort of gives you a general sense of, hey, this might feel really hard and it might be really hard, but it will work out by the time
Mhm.
when it's supposed to. When you find that right role, when you find your ideal company, when you find the right people to talk to and get through the interview process, all of
So
it
I like this
is
because you're not saying, hey, I can make the job search go faster, but what you are saying is I could make the information and the data more accessible to you so that you can, we are here to help you help yourself.
exactly.
So I love that. I love that. So Jason, um, we will follow you. Everyone, follow Jason, and definitely. What day does that movers, shakers, and moneymakers come out? Or is there a
Mover Shakers and Moneymakers comes out every Monday.
Okay.
Good start to the week, good recap of the last
Yes.
week. And then the sort of more in-depth insights come out. We aim for every 2 weeks or so. When we have something that's, a really good, juicy story, a really interesting question that we've answered.
Yeah. So in the show notes, you will have the link to Live Data Technologies. You will also have the link to Jason's LinkedIn profile where you can find all of his good stuff. I need to tell you guys, this is no joke. Use these free resources. I hear people saying all the time, oh, it's so expensive. It's so expensive. Now you have no excuse. You have all the good stuff, the best stuff right here and accessible to help you help yourself, and use this, like Jason said, watch the signals. So thank you for all your work, for your generosity in coming on the show and chatting with me and giving me the 411 and all that good stuff. And I'll see you very, very soon, Jason. All
Absolutely.
right.
Thank you for having me. And yeah, if anyone has any follow-up questions or, needs any advice in terms of how to best leverage the data that we have publicly available or through the free trial, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Awesome. Absolutely.
Or if you have any
Absolutely.
interesting human capital question, I always need more
Yes.
questions, and they're
Yes.
endless.
For sure. All right. We'll have a great rest of your day. And thank you all for tuning in. And by the way, two quick things. Number one, if you are on the job in the job market and you are looking for an executive position, see below. There's a link right there for the 30-day blast. The 30-day blast is a 4-week boot camp to kick your butt so that you can get found and also land faster and make more. That's important. Jason just finished saying it takes a long time sometimes. So good to get a kickstart. And then the second thing is, yes, please go ahead and subscribe to our podcast. We would so appreciate that because that's how we grow and we need you. So thank you for everything. And thanks for listening. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you for joining today. We appreciate your listening ears. Big time. We ask this: use these tools, not tomorrow, right now, and share them by spreading the love, leaving us a rating and subscribe so you don't miss the next career blast in a half. Most of all, thank you for you.